but the threat of lone wolves or small cells of terrorists. Is complex. It's harder to detect and harder to prevent. It's one of the most difficult challenges that we face. And preventing these kinds of attacks on American soil is going to require sustained effort. So I just want to repeat, the good news is that because of extraordinary efforts from law enforcement as well as our military intelligence, we are doing a better job at preventing any large-scale attacks on the homeland. On the other hand, the small, individual lone wolf attacks or small cells become harder to detect and they become more sophisticated, using new technologies. And that means that we're going to have to pick up our game to prevent these attacks. It's also true why, ultimately, in order for us to defeat terrorist groups like ISIL and Al-Qaeda, it's going to also require us to discredit their ideology, the twisted thinking that draws vulnerable people into their ranks. As I've said before, and I know our military leaders agree, this broader challenge of countering violent extremism is not simply a military effort. Ideologies are not defeated with guns. They're defeated by better ideas, a more attractive and more compelling vision. So the United States will continue to do our part. By working with partners to counter ISIL's hateful propaganda, especially online. We'll constantly reaffirm through words and deeds that we will never be at war with Islam. We're fighting terrorists who distort Islam and whose victims are mostly Muslims. But around the world, We're also going to insist on partnering with Muslim communities as they seek security. Prosperity and the dignity that they deserve. And we're going to expect those communities to step up in terms of pushing back as hard as they can. In conjunction with other people of goodwill, against these hateful ideologies in order to discredit them more effectively. Particularly when it comes to what we're teaching young people. And this larger battle for hearts and minds is going to be a generational struggle. It's ultimately not going to be won or lost by the United States alone. It will be decided by the countries and the communities that terrorists like ISIL target. It's going to be up to Muslim communities, including scholars and clerics, to keep rejecting warped interpretations of Islam, and to protect their sons and daughters from recruitment. It will be up to all people, leaders and citizens to reject the sectarianism that often fuels the resentments and conflicts upon which terrorists are currently thriving. It will be up to governments to address the political and economic grievances that terrorists exploit. Nations that empower citizens to decide their own destiny. That uphold human rights for all their people, that invest in education and create opportunities for their young people. Those can be powerful antidotes to extremist ideologies. Those are the countries that will find a true partner in the United States. In closing, let me note that this 4th of July we celebrated 239 years of American independence. Across more than 2 centuries, we've faced much bigger, much more formidable challenges than this civil war. a Great Depression, fascism, communism, terrible natural disasters. "9/11. And every time, every generation, our nation has risen to the moment. We don't simply endure, we emerge stronger than before. And that will be the case here. Our mission to destroy ISIL and to keep our country safe will be difficult. It will take time. There will be setbacks as well as progress. But as President and Commander-in-Chief, I want to say to all our men and women in uniform who are serving in this operation, our pilots, the crews on the ground, our personnel not only on the ground but at sea. Our intelligence teams and our diplomatic teams, I want to thank you. We are proud of you, and you have my total confidence that you're going to succeed. To the American people, I want to say we will continue to be vigilant. We will persevere. And just as we have for more than 2 centuries, we will ultimately prevail. Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks to the team up on the stage here with me, they're doing an outstanding job. Question, take a question. President Obama, you know what, I will take a question. Go ahead. Question, every service member who is listening to you today, Mr. President, is wondering, are you going to veto the defense bills that are going to pay me? What is your latest thinking on that? Because we've heard second-hand through statements of policy that your advisors would threaten a veto. What's your take, sir? Would you veto the appropriations bills? President Obama, our men and women are going to get paid. And if you'll note that I've now been president for 6.5 years and we've had some wrangling with Congress in the past, our service members haven't missed a paycheck. But what is also important in terms of our budget is making sure that we are not shortchanging all the elements of American power that allow us to secure the nation and to project our power around the world. So what we're not going to do is to accept a budget that's short. Changes are long-term requirements for new technologies, for readiness. We're not going to eat our seed corn by devoting too much money on things we don't need now. And robbing ourselves of the capacity to make sure that we're prepared for future threats. I've worked very closely with the chairman and the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to develop a budget that is realistic and that looks out into the future and says this is how we're going to handle any possible contingency. And we can't do that if we've got a budget that shortchanges. Vital operations and continues to fund things that are not necessary. We also have to remind ourselves that the reason we have the best military in the world is first and foremost, because we've got the best troops in history. But it's also because we've got a strong economy, and we've got a well-educated population. And we've got an incredible research operation and universities that allow us to create new products that then can be translated into our military superiority around the world. We shortchange those, we're going to be less secure. So the way we have to look at this budget is to recognize that, A, we can't think short term. We've got to think long term, and B, part of our national security is making sure that we continue to have a strong economy and that we continue to make the investments that we need in things like education and research that are going to be vital for us to be successful long term. Question: as an Army reservist, I'm curious to know if you have any plans. To send any more American troops overseas right now, any additional forces? President Obama, there are no current plans to do so. That's not something that we currently discussed. I've always said that I'm going to do what's necessary to protect the homeland. One of the principles that we all agree on, though, and I pressed folks pretty hard because in these conversations, with my military advisors, I want to make sure I'm getting blunt and unadulterated, sick, uncensored advice. But in every one of the conversations that we've had, the strong consensus is that in order for us to succeed, long term in this fight against ISIL, we have to develop local security forces that can sustain progress. It is not enough for us to simply send in American troops to temporarily set back organizations like ISIL. But to then, as soon as we leave, see that void filled once again with extremists. It is going to be vital for us to make sure that we are preparing the kinds of local ground forces and security forces with our partners that can not only succeed against ISIL, but then sustain in terms of security and in terms of governance. Because if we try to do everything ourselves all across the Middle East, all across North Africa, we'll be playing whack-a-mole, and there will be a whole lot of unintended consequences that ultimately make us less secure. All right. Thank you. I didn't even plan to do this. You guys got 2 bonus questions. Barack Obama. Post-Security Council meeting press conference on ISIL. Delivered August 4, 2016, Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. Good afternoon, everybody. I just met again with my National Security Council on the campaign to destroy ISIL. I want to thank Secretary Carter and Chairman Dunford, who just returned from meetings with our coalition. Partners in the Middle East for hosting us and for their continued leadership of our men and women in uniform. I last updated the American people on our campaign in June, shortly after the horrifying attack in Orlando. In the weeks since, we've continued to be relentless in our fight against ISIL, and on the ground in Syria and Iraq, ISIL continues to lose territory. Tragically, however, we have also seen that ISIL still has the ability to direct and inspire attacks. So we've seen terrible bombings in Iraq and in Jordan, in Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. Yemen and Afghanistan, attacks on an Istanbul airport, a restaurant in Bangladesh. Bastille Day celebrations and a church in France, and a music festival in Germany. In fact, the decline of ISIL in Syria and Iraq appears to be causing it to shift to tactics that we've seen. Before an even greater emphasis on encouraging high-profile terrorist attacks, including in the United States.